GrayMatter leaders, to our unpublished podcast for GrayMatter Career Coaching. I'm so delighted that you've chosen to tune in and invest some of your time today to engage with us in a conversation intended to move you into the leading edge of your life and business as a leader. Here at GrayMatter, we believe you've got the power to activate the part of your brain scientifically known as the gray matter. And as you do, you can take yourself out of autopilot thinking and behavior. Now, if you're wondering, my name is Jeanette. I am the head of sales and communication here at GMC and the host, if you will, the facilitator for today's leadership conversation, which is more like a workshop. And you'll see what I mean in just a bit. Of course, I'm joined by our founder, the wonderful BJ Gray. And today she's walking us through something special where we're talking about leadership crisis. And we're taking a different approach today because we're going to focus more on really empowering you with some incredible resources, ideas, concepts that will not only make you a better leader in the 21st century, but it's also going to walk you through the journey of going from whichever level of leadership you might be in to what BJ calls leadership 3.0. Let me bring her out so she can fill us in on what we're going to be learning today. So without further ado, BJ, are you here?
I am. Hi, Jeanette. How are you?
Hi, BJ. I'm awesome. And yourself?
I'm good. And I'm super excited to talk about where I think our leadership is around the world and in business right now, which I believe we're having some sort of leadership crisis. And I want to dive into that and talk about that with you.
Wonderful. And I know today we're taking a bit of a fun twist to our usual conversations where we're going to emphasize more on the actual training of this. So you can not almost walk us through a mini webinar, if you will, on the different aspects, as well as your journey of how you went from that outdated model of leadership to what you have dubbed Leadership 3.0. Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready. Yes, let's dive in.
So here's where I would love to start. Explain to me what you mean when you say that there are certain skills that are required that we all need to learn as leaders in this century. What do you mean by that?
I believe that leadership has always embodied, strong communication, teamwork, the basic skills of leading a team, or if you were a parent, leading your family, right? You need to talk, you need to motivate them, you need to keep them productive. But I think in today's 21st century, that leadership, there's still a lot of leaders catching up to the new way of leading. And I believe the new way of leading is a much more interpersonal leadership style versus a top-down leadership style. And that's why I feel like we're in crisis. I feel like leaders haven't been able to or have the tools to develop what I would call the ability to shift the way they connect with people, to be more about others versus like giving direction. Like we came from a place for 50, 60 years where leaders gave the direction, the employees did the work. And now I believe to take employees to where they need to go, a leader needs to be much more involved in a personal relationship, like a relationship that's built on trust and a different type of communication. And then the employee will be motivated and produce effective work. And even the employee will be problem solving along with you. It seems like in the olden days, I guess, of leadership, the leaders solved the problems and told the employees what to do. And now I think it's more communal. And I think employees want this more communal type of culture. And I believe that it requires a shift in mentality for leaders, but it also requires a shift in their own behavior and a shift in their own self-awareness. And those are skills that we haven't been taught or taken the time. And I also feel like those are skills people find hard to work on. So when I say we're in a leadership crisis, I think it's because we haven't examined what's required nowadays for us to be a leader.
And you've obviously been part of the old leadership style, performance based, telling the employees what to do, because that's kind of where you forged your corporate career, and you were very successful even with that leadership. Do you want to walk us through how that world was and how you got to where you are today and why you call this 3.0? So you started at essentially leadership 1.0. How did you make that evolution to
Oh,
where you are?
yeah. So, obviously, back in the late 80s, when I started my career, it was more of a leadership approach where it was based on hierarchy and respect, and you never questioned the boss, and you did a perfect job, and you followed the rules. And that's what I learned if I was going to grow up and, become a leader of teams, is that's how teams should see me, right? They should respect me. I'm the boss. You don't question me. And yes, that's how I
Mhm.
grew my career, in that kind of framework of leadership. And then I believe in the late 90s, when the internet came around and technology was booming, we shifted a little bit leadership style because it got faster, right? Work and the workplace and products became faster. Even fashion became fast fashion in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so leadership had to change. And I believe then it became a little bit more, we started hearing about emotional intelligence, right? And what were the
Mhm.
emotional intelligence skills that you needed to teach people in this fast environment. And there was a lot of Harvard started teaching emotional intelligence, etc. And I think many companies embraced it, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. They embraced the four big skills of emotional intelligence, but they didn't go deep enough to help people develop them. So a subset of people, a very small set of people, did develop them, but not enough. So then now we're in leadership 2.0, where it's the late 90s, early 2000s, and I think emotional intelligence became the big buzzword for leaders. And now, 2020, 2021, leadership needs a 3.0. It needs to still have people catch up with the emotional intelligence skills, but now I think it's even harder to engage employees. So if you haven't learned if you're still stuck in leadership 1.0, where you think you're the boss and it's a top-down approach, you're way lost. If you've skimmed the emotional intelligence arena, you're on the right track, but now you've got to level up your emotional intelligence skills and learn to engage employees in a very different way. So it's more communal, it's more relationship built, and that requires a different journey for leaders to learn. And it requires more self-awareness of the leader, because your personal blind spots and beliefs get in the way of creating a relationship with people that's authentic and built on trust. So you have to almost excavate yourself and learn a lot about yourself first before you're going to be able to shift your leadership behavior and engage people differently. And that's a whole another game for leaders to learn. So I feel like we really need to shift from the 70 years of top down leadership, and we need to catch people up on emotional intelligence, and then we need to teach them how to engage people differently, but first understand themselves better, strip away the ego, strip away the limiting beliefs, and really shift their own behavior.
And what's the urgency here? Like, what's driving the need for this change? Is it technology that's just making it impossible to lead in any other way? What's your opinion there?
I think it's technology. I think it's this remote working. I think that we've just gotten so fast, and our society also is gotten so we've it's not complicated. I feel like with everything, the tools that we have at our fingertips, like technology, the internet, it's made life actually easier, but that's given us more time to complicate things in our brain. So because life is so much easier, information is
Wait,
so
say that
fast.
again.
Okay.
That's so funny. Are you saying that we've complicated things in our head because of all this information?
Yeah, because it's like we don't have it doesn't take time. Like it used to go to the library to read the books, to do the research, and now within nanoseconds we get everything at our fingertips. And so that space, that time that we used to spend doing things to get to gain the knowledge is reduced down to 30 seconds with
Mhm.
our fingertips. But that leaves our brains much more time to like screw things up in our head. So like we're constantly having chatter in our head now versus doing the hard work. And I feel like people now need more things at their fingertips to make them happier faster. So it's like this, our society has become so information driven and fast, yet our brains are overcomplicating it because it's just, we don't know what to do with with our time in our head.
Could it be that maybe, I mean, obviously, I see your point that there are pros and cons to having technology and so much information at our fingertips. But could it also be that perhaps what's not happening, or at least not being encouraged as much with leaders that have been there for since the 80s, for example, like yourself, is not enough leaders are being encouraged to expand or stretch their brains or activate, better word, activate um, the part of their brain that can enable them to handle all this information better. So in other words, like maybe they're like still at the horse and buggy era
Mhm.
when it comes to their brain, instead of operating at like rocket uh, era, if that makes sense. Could
Yeah,
it be that that's kind of what the issue is?
yeah, I believe leaders and just people in general haven't taken the time to examine their thinking and what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. I think people initially just want to jump to fixing problems or getting more things to make them happy versus understanding the why. Why are they trying to do that? What are people thinking? What are they thinking? And I think it's going to require to relate to people and to make changes. It's going to require understanding your own thinking and your own mindset, as well as learning to try to help others understand their mindset. And um, here's a good example. You used to be able just to go have a meeting with one of your employees and sit down and give them feedback or tell them what they need to do. And the employee would pick up and walk away and go do it. Nowadays, you have a meeting with your employee, you tell them something, their brain is interpreting it very differently than what you're saying. Like, I feel like our brains have gone into overdrive and our interpretation of things isn't um isn't so black and white, isn't so straightforward. And so because we know people are going to go overthink things, you need to have a new style of communication. As a leader in leadership 3.0, your communication has to be with more candor. You have to be more direct, you have to be more overt. And I think the only way you can speak with candor like that is you have to feel like the employee trusts you and you trust the employee. And that's what I mean by the relationship has to evolve in the workplace differently so that we can have these very direct, candid conversations because we know that employee is going to walk away and interpret something differently than what you're saying. And vice versa, you interpret things now differently because our brains are on overdrive. Just I feel like people's brains are in a very, they function differently than they did back in the 50s.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's for sure. And so, I mean, I know now you know you're sitting at the helm of leadership 3.0, but it wasn't always like that, and you had to go through this journey and learn these lessons that you're teaching, sometimes in very painful ways. uh, but if you could summarize for us what that journey was like, and one of the things you wish you knew, or um, something that you now can see was missing that you wish you had to help you go from 1.0, 2.0 to 3.0?
Great question. I think it was later in my career when I was an executive and I saw my effectiveness start to wane. Like the way I was being a leader wasn't working as best as it could, and that required me to dig deeper into my own um, limitations on how I thought about things and limitations how I thought about others. Like you have a preconceived idea about how things should work and how people should act. And I realized that my judgment or beliefs was holding back my ability to be effective. And the fact that I always wanted to be justified in my job. Like I felt like I wanted people to understand my way of thinking and doing it. And it was the best way. And I realized at a certain point, I had to bring more people into the conversation. And that required some vulnerability on my part and how do you be vulnerable and when you're the boss? You didn't want to, I didn't want to think that I didn't know, or that I
Yeah.
didn't know how to lead, but it does require getting to know yourself better before you can walk that line of vulnerability and include others into the how things are going to get done better. And so I think that aha moment when I woke up and said, gosh, I'm not as effective as I need to be, and what do I need to understand to be better, it started with myself, and it started with my way of thinking and my problems, how I saw things. um, and that's when I wound up
And
uncovering.
out of that, having gone through that experience, this is part of what inspired you to create the mental fitness boot camp, isn't it?
When I finally realized there was tools out there to help us develop self-awareness and to help us figure out how we're thinking, and that thinking creates all the results we're getting, that was game changing for me. And it requires a different level of mental health and mental fitness, and I want to teach that. I want to give that to others, and that's what inspired me to create this online boot camp called Mental Fitness Boot Camp, Leadership 3.0. So that's really where it came from, is like once I learned it and it became such a game changer for me, I want to be able to share it with others and teach the basics of it, teach them more about themselves so that they can go out and develop a different style of leadership.
Mhm. So circling back to how we started, you talked about the need to learn certain skills so we can become better leaders. Do you want to walk us through what some of those skills are, like practically speaking?
Yeah. So I think the first one is, I've been kind of skirting around them, but the first skill is managing yourself successfully, and learning about your personality, your strengths, your opportunities, and how you interpret the world and how you interpret things so that you can manage yourself and have more self-discipline in the workplace. Because if you can't manage yourself, then you're not going to be able to manage others. And then I think that communication is important. And like I said, we need to evolve how we communicate to be able to speak more with candor. And that requires a level of vulnerability and trust. And then I think that problem solving has to evolve. It's not about just solving problems in your immediate role, the responsibilities that you were hired for. It's like becoming more communal in how you problem solve, and you help others problem solve in their world. You're responsible not only for your own work, but you're responsible to the business for everybody's work. And it's just taking on a different mentality about that. And then building teams and teamwork. I think relationships have to change. Relationships aren't about, like I said, top down. It's more about trust and um, knowing that you might not have all the answers and being more curious. I really think people need to come from a place of curiosity when they're building a team and having teamwork. What do they not, having this constant little bubble over your head asking, what is it that I don't know right now? Versus thinking that you know it all as the boss. And then the next thing is critical thinking. I feel like people come and they do a really good job. They know their job. They're hired for a certain responsibility and a role, and they haven't put together the ability to connect the dots and understand if the work that they're putting out there is still useful, or if it's causing more problems. So even though you might be hired to do X, Y, and Z, you have to constantly be reinventing what X, Y, and Z is, because the business is changing so often. You need to have critical thinking skills to make sure that you're still delivering work that is effective to the business. So I think it's just taking the basic structure of leadership skills and business skills and going deeper with them, changing them, evolving them.
So how does this translate? Uh, if we now take those core skills that you just mentioned, how would I be able to receive or practice and learn those skills? Mental fitness boot camp. Tell us about that. What does
Are
that
you
look like inside?
So I think that if you were to take, if you were to develop those 21st century skills that I just talked about, it's actually broken down into three courses that I'm going to create. But the mental fitness framework is basically this. The first part of the framework to become mentally fit is self-awareness. The second part of the framework, and that self-awareness will be one course, and it'll be a 4-week course. And then the second part is trust. And within trust is when you're building the relationships, you're reshaping your communication, you're dealing with conflict much easier. And that's another course. And then the last course is going to be brave leadership. And that's like really putting it to practice, becoming a servant leader to your employees versus being the boss. And it's like really practicing navigating that uncertainty and letting go of your ego. And so I've developed the mental fitness framework to have those three things that you need to conquer, and it happens in 3 different modules or 3 different courses, and each course is going to be a 4-week course. And so the first one that I'm going to be putting out in the beginning of 2021 is about self-awareness. And I'm happy to break that down for you if you want to talk about what's included in the course or how it looks. But let me know, like, if you have some questions. I mean, I think the first course is like the foundation for mental fitness and mental health. Week number 1 is going to be about self-awareness. It's the self inventory part. It's where you really get to know yourself, your personality, and you dive into overcoming what beliefs that might be holding you back. I think we get stuck in our belief system that we've been taught by society and by our parents. So it's really launching into the areas that you just never got to know about yourself in a deeper way. And the second week is going to be about teaching you how to think. So now that you understand yourself, I'm going to really give you some tools for mental fitness, which is my tool called the thought model. And the thought model to me is like, you think about how we use water to wash our hands and get our hands clean. The thought model is what washes your mind, so that your mind is clean and you can start thinking from a more neutral place and leading from a more neutral place. So the second week is all about teaching you how to think. And the third week is going to be around emotional fitness and creating your own personal operating system. So now this is like where you learn that your emotions cause you to react in the workplace, and how do you deal with those negative emotions. We all have negative emotions when we're at work. How do you manage them? And then how do you become anti-fragile so that they don't affect you and you can still be effective at work? So you've got the foundation of mental fitness in week 2, and we move on to emotional fitness in week 3. And then week 4 is like really being the boss of you. It's about self-discipline. You need to create ways to maximize your efficiency so that you have time to be a leader. If you're constantly caught up in reacting at work and you're overwhelmed with all the things you have to do, you're not going to be a good leader. So how do you create self-discipline and maximum efficiency? Is you become the boss of you. And I have several concepts that take you through energy management, environment management, time management, and productivity management or performance management. And you have to be disciplined to apply those concepts to your life so that you can create some more space to be a leader. And so those are the 4 weeks for the course and that course is just all about self-awareness, right? Um, and I'm excited for people to sign up for this course, although I get that it's effectively about changing yourself and your own behaviors, and that's a hard thing to do. You really have to have a growth mindset to want to do this kind of work. And so I feel like people are always hesitant to step into this first course because it's an investment into themselves first, to shore up their leadership or to level up their leadership skills. The second course is like communication and relationships, and that seems like someplace people always want to start. But I really encourage people to sign up for this first course and understand themselves better.
Because being a better leader has to start with me working on myself to become the best version of me that I can be. Is that
Totally.
kind of
Yes,
your approach?
exactly. Exactly. And there's so much to us that we don't even know. We operate in such an autopilot way. We don't ever break ourselves down and break down the chatter in our head and break down these beliefs that hold us back. You know, we can be our own worst enemy until you get to know yourself and let go of some things and manage your emotions better and understand your emotions. You can't lead others.
At a time when the environment, the marketplace, the business world is just so volatile and it feels like we just don't have enough time. There's too many fires to put out. Um, do you feel like even in the midst of all that chaos, this is still a decision and an investment that is necessary? Like the as a leader, if I do want to feel more in control, if I want to get better at handling the current business environment, this is the work that I need to do, not uh, work for hours or
Oh,
find some
100%.
other
Let me
kind
tell
of
you,
remedy. Mm, mm.
100%. This is the work, because let me tell you, the chaos doesn't bother me anymore. I can move through chaos much easier now that I have these tools that I have about self-discipline and self-awareness and how to think. I'm not as overwhelmed anymore by a bunch of stuff because, one, I've learned to let go of things I can't control. I can move through things because I know how to manage my thoughts better now. My mindset is much more fluid. I don't get a lot of overwhelm comes from us just spinning in our head. It's not because we can't get through the work. We're very productive people. We are super smart, evolved human beings. So the overwhelm is mostly mental. So now with the tools that I bring to coaching and to help people, it makes you so much more stronger and resilient to deal with uncertainty and chaos. And you don't get effective. You kind of stay more neutral. I am so much more even keel. I thrive now. I can thrive better with all the things that are thrown at me. So you have to
And
understand this stuff. It's so important. It's game changing.
how does a leader justify uh, the time investment, the resource investment that would go into this? Because it's normal. Like if it's the traditional types of trainings, they justify it with like hardcore metrics, right? How do you often help a client almost like measure this progress so that he or she can see how this is going to possibly impact their life, but also their organization?
I think it's about reflecting on what you've been doing and is it really working? Like you need new tools to change. So, are you really happy at your job? Do you really find job satisfaction trying to climb the corporate ladder and going to meetings every day and banging your head against the wall? Or do you need a new way to deal with these kinds of things? And I think it's like reflecting is like you can you can keep going the way you're at and maybe not be happy, or you can try to think about taking a 4-week course or 3 months of your time, maybe a couple hours a week only. That's all it takes, is a couple hours a week to learn something new. I mean, I just challenge people to want to learn something completely different. And we sit on our couch and watch Netflix every night. You can definitely carve out a couple hours a week, maybe it's Sunday, to work on yourself. I think you just need to, like, you'll work on yourself at the gym for an hour a day, and you'll work on yourself to lose weight maybe. But why don't you work on yourself to be a better leader or to be a better person and to be happier? Like, I think that's the challenge I put out there for people.
I love that. And that's definitely something to reflect on. When it comes to understanding, so coming from the context of, as you can see on social media now, it's like there's this huge trend of finding your purpose and purposeful leadership. In the context of what you coach on and the importance of developing that self-awareness and becoming mentally fit and increasing the level of resilience, do you also feel like that can bring about a greater sense of purpose in the workplace for me if I engage in this?
Oh, I think if you're a leader and you're demonstrating Leadership 3.0 principles, then you will engage your employees differently, and that gives them a sense of purpose. I mean, this all kind of comes, purposeful leadership to me is about finding ways to motivate your employees that make them feel valued, and where everyone is sort of equal and there's endless opportunities. And to me, making them feel valued is showing them that you really care and you're interested in their life, and the why behind all, you're sharing the why behind all the decisions that you're making. And that makes them feel like there's a purpose, right? When you really involve them in the journey and you engage them differently, it feels more purposeful. That's the relationship. That to feel purpose, you have to feel safe and like you matter and that you're valued. And that's where purpose comes in, is that building that new type of relationship at work. And yes, that's purposeful leadership. It's servant leadership. It's how can you help your employees do better and remove the impediments for your employees versus your employees delivering productivity for you. It's like shifting, it's like almost flipping the switch.
Do you have ways in which we can promote candor within team communication, whether it's the leader communicating with a member of the team, an employer with the employee, and vice versa? Are there tools that we have to make that process easier? Because being candid is not a norm, and it's still really hard for most people.
Yeah, we're
And
too
it does
polite.
require a lot of, yeah, and it does require a lot of confidence though, but mainly because we just don't want to hurt the other person's feelings.
Well, let me tell you this. First of all, my first rule of thumb is you can't hurt people's feelings. Let me tell you why. And this is a big concept, and people probably won't, this will take a little bit for them to wrap their head around. You can't hurt someone's feelings by your comments. It's what the person who is thinking the thought about what you're saying, it causes their own feelings. We create our own feelings by our thinking, our own thoughts. Somebody can't create a feeling. If you told me my hair looks ugly, I could say, wow, thanks for that. I'm going to go check it out and make sure it gets better. Or I could say, what a bitch, that really hurt my feelings. It's my thinking that causes me to feel bad or not feel bad. It's not the comment. So first of all, we can't hurt people's feelings. So that's the first spring. That's the starting point for speaking up with candor. Now I know it's awkward to speak up with candor, but here's my golden rule for speaking up with candor. Mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. If you just take that, mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. That's like the principle for speaking up with candor. So here's an example of that. The leader is looking at some work, and the work needs to be changed. And the leader says, go take a look at this again. Tell me if you think, go look at some more images or more copy and see if you can get it to be better. And then the team goes away and they said, well, she says to look at this again and make it better. That is so not candid and clear. And so now the team's going to interpret what they think making it better means and grab more images. But if the boss, and this is a very rudimentary example, but if the boss was to say, I want you to use images where she's turned sideways and she's in this color clothing and she's doing this X, Y, and Z, then they can go away and it's much more clear. Just be candid. You're not going to hurt their feelings if they picked the wrong images or if the images aren't to your liking. But say that, I don't like these images, but can you do this? Like, you have to almost like be super overt nowadays so people don't go spinning and interpreting and like you said, hurting their feelings, etc. So that's what I mean by speak with candor. And I have been practicing this, and I actually say sometimes before a conversation, I'm going to speak candidly now. That puts the person on notice that they're going to hear something direct from me. Mm-hmm. And then that gives them the opportunity to say, I don't understand what you're saying. If we're going to speak with candor, then they get the opportunity to say, I don't understand that, or they can debate me. But now we're speaking where we're going to get to the root of things much quicker, less interpretation, less blame, less not liking each other. It's like, hey, do you mind if I just speak up here for a second? I could be wrong, but I want to share my thoughts. Say it. Just say what's on your mind, because we go around trying to interpret shit silently in our heads, and it causes unhealthy cultures. It causes lack of clarity. It causes unproductivity. But if we start to speak with candor and we get comfortable and confident doing it, but don't do it in a mean way. Say what you mean what you say, but don't do it mean. Then we're going to have so much better work environment.
Simple. I love it. And what I'm taking away from this, and thank you so much for that clarification, is that it really does matter that as the leader passing on that piece of communication, the leader must have clarity for herself or for himself first, because then they are able to communicate that, and of course communicate it in the best way possible, which all comes back to how well do I know myself, how well do I know what I want, my temperament, my vision. Essentially, it is about being as mentally fit as I can be and being in top shape so that I can then be able to communicate effectively with others.
Yeah, I think it's courage. I think it's finding courage every day to speak up, and finding courage to lean into the job, no matter what. And it's like courage over fear. I want people to like think about this for 2021. Choose courage over fear. It doesn't mean it's going to not be uncomfortable. It doesn't mean you're not going to be scared, but it means that you're willing to have more courage to have those crucial type of conversations or speaking up with candor more often than not, so that we can move on and the workplace becomes much more productive and efficient, I think. And so, yeah, I think it's about courage and confidence in 2021.
Skills that can be developed. We can all develop them if we just choose to invest the time, as you said.
Yeah, yes, if you invest in your personal development right now, you will be a better leader, a better family person, a better person to the world. So I think it's important that people really sign up and develop some self-awareness. Step one.
Wonderful. This has been amazing. I know we've gone longer than usual, but there was a lot of ground to cover there. I'm so grateful that you found the time to share this with us. And I definitely look forward to more and more types of conversations. I think there's so many more angles we could take in unpacking this concept of leadership crisis, and then what is needed for becoming a better leader in the 21st century. There's a lot more ground that we can cover with this. So I hope you can bring us some more new learnings and new concepts over the coming weeks and months. But I really appreciate your time, BJ. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Jeanette. Thanks.